New episode of the call up here, and we are going to talk about the breakout prospects from 2025. We're at that point of the year where, yes, of course, still got some new things popping up. We're going to get you covered on the Arizona Fall League. I'm about to head out to Arizona in a matter of like 2 hours here, right after we record this. But it's the time of year, Elijah, where we get to look back and see, like, just reflect on the season. Who are some players that really just exceeded expectations? Who are some that popped out of nowhere? I think the season is so long that you start talking about Rainel Rodriguez, and you forget that at the beginning of the season, we weren't talking about that guy at all. So those are the players that we're excited to talk about in this episode, and it's a fun list of probably prospects we've talked a lot about, and maybe some that still deserve a little bit more shine.
Yeah, definitely. This is cool. So I was thinking earlier in the week, like, oh, we really need to do just like guys that broke onto the scene. So my first qualification was like nobody that was top 100, right? Nobody that was even in our top 100 or even necessarily in consideration for top 100 coming into 2025, right? And then I mentioned it in our Discord, and we've got some prospect sickos in there, and that's why I
Yeah.
absolutely love it because I was like, hey guys, who are some breakouts you thought of? And we started getting names that like a couple I'd never heard of, and I think I'm already trending towards prospect sicko. So that's when I was like, okay, we need to break this up into two. So this will be part one, where it's going to be more of these bigger name guys that are kind of, a lot of them are top 100 now after not being top 100 starting the year. And then next week, we're going to do a little bit of a deep cut episode for those wonderful people in the Discord, where we get into some names that like we have not talked about at all and aren't even top 100 at all yet, but went from like nobody knew them to now they're on the radar, at least of that given fan base.
And then I think to wrap up this kind of, I think we've had different trilogies or kind of the theme here
Yeah.
on these series. Looking back at my
Yeah.
predictions for breakout. There were some good ones, there's some funny ones, and then we can kind of reflect back because some of these names are actually guys that I'd picked before the year, and I'll probably shout that out when it is a guy that I picked. But we'll probably do a separate episode, just kind of focusing on how did my preseason breakout picks fare, and I think it'll be pretty funny. There's always there's somewhere I can pat myself on the back, and then there's somewhere it's like I think it's fun to say why didn't he break out? Why did I think he would? And what happened to maybe not allow that to happen, or what was the read that was wrong by me? I think it's always a fun kind of like transparent learning situation there. So I think that'll be fun. And then I think we can do something similar to this, like with just the top 100 retrospective and
Yeah.
stuff like that, of like who are some prospects that maybe we were a little bit too bullish on going into the year, and why did it maybe go the other way? Like there's a lot of different spinoffs and things that I'm excited about as we just continue to look back at 2025. But again, don't worry, we're still going to be covering the Arizona Fall League in detail.
Yeah, definitely. Once you're out in Arizona, that'll be getting going. And this stuff will go all off season, right? So if you have
Yep.
ideas too, if anybody that listens to the show frequently has ideas of like which angle of covering prospects from 25 you want to see, feel free to hit us up. You can shoot me a DM, you can shoot the call up account a DM, you can, if you're in the Discord, you can message us there. So we're gonna do tons of stuff like this, looking back in different angles from the season as the off season goes on.
100%. And the last thing I'll say on that is that's why I love the Discord so much, is it just allows us to, it's almost like a focus group for us too. Aside
Yeah.
from the fact that everyone's become friends of ours and like it's just fun to talk ball all the time. It's really helpful feedback and info on what we should talk about. And we have a separate channel just for the call up within the giant Discord in there, right? We have another one for the Just Baseball show, and then of course general prospect talk, all that stuff. But just being able to talk to folks in the call up and say, hey, what do you want us to talk about? What are some things that you want us to get into, or just sometimes people out of nowhere spitballing ideas for us is always awesome. So the more the merrier in there, and it's always very helpful for us. So would love to have you in there. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's jump right into it. We got a lot of names and some really fun ones.
Yeah, let's do it. So the first one is someone we've talked about a lot, Cam Schlittler of the Yankees organization. Obviously, if you don't know who Cam Schlittler is, I'm not sure you've been watching the playoffs because it was incredible this season to see what he did. But for this, we want to talk a little bit about how he broke out from a minor league point to then where he got when he got to the bigs, because he just kept getting better this season. He started to show this breakout in the minors, but then the numbers and the stuff just kept ticking up for Schlittler throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean that, and not it's funny too. You go back even further, and I think we were talking about this in the staff chat a little bit because, just some folks that had eyes on him even back in college. Where I mean, you look at him in 2022, he was a pitchability guy. He was sitting. He averaged 90.6 miles per hour on his fastball in 2022. To go to where now we're seeing him exceed triple digits is pretty remarkable. But then just the quality of the secondaries in general. But when you just look at what he did this year as it just continued to progress. I think the velo continued to tick up, which is not entirely surprising considering guys, you get to the show and you're gonna have more adrenaline, then you get to the playoffs and you're gonna have even more adrenaline. But it was still pretty staggering from minor leagues to major leagues when this is a guy that's already up 5 ticks from 2022 and a couple ticks from 23. He averaged 95.5 in the minor leagues this year on the fastball with good characteristics, and he commands it really well, and that's why it's a great pitch. But also, that's the other wrinkle that's underrated in this whole thing too, is the command has gotten so much better as well. But he averaged 95.5 in the minor leagues. I what was he, north of 97 in the show
90,
on the fastball?
98, sitting
Yeah,
98 on the fastball.
dude, that's two and a
It's
half
insane.
ticks. Like
From in mid-season. It's not like there was an off-season adjustment, right? Like,
that's 8 ticks above or 7.5 above 2022. So that alone is remarkable. And then I'm just looking at the minor league numbers here. Can you give me like the pitch usage breakdown on
yeah, so
Scott?
in the big leagues, right? He was running a 55% for fastball, 21 with the cutter, 15 with the curve, mixes in 7 with the sinker, but 55% fastball and 21 being cutter, right? And sinker. So that's 80% some version of a fastball, right?
Yep. And I think that's the most fun and unique part of this is he wasn't that high usage in the minor leagues. It was about like 45% four seamer, about 20% cutter. But then he wasn't really utilizing that sinker nearly as much. And I think that was another wrinkle that he unlocked as he got to the big leagues. And I love it because you look, his sweeper is good. Like there's definitely plenty of swing and miss between the curveball and the sweeper, and that can be something that is very effective as a put away pitch for him. But I think you see a lot of guys get to the show and then they start relying on the secondaries more. They start spinning the ball and they don't trust the heater as much. And I think for him, you saw in the one playoff start where he was absolutely dominant. It was almost all fastballs where he was just going
Yep.
four seamer up, sinkers down, and he could go cutter in, backdoor the cutter, sinker away from guys. And when you can pretty much go all 4 quadrants with those fastballs and he was dotting them, you don't need much else other than that when you're sitting in the upper 90s. So, like the fact that he does have the breaking balls as well off of that is why we saw some of those just ridiculous, like he could be on no hitter watch type of outings when he's locating the fastball. But what's amazing to me is he doesn't even have to have those breaking balls there for him. And I think the variations of the fastball, if he's spotting them, is enough for him to go deep into ball games. And I love pitchers that have multiple layers here, right? Maybe there's some days where the sinker is just not rolling off the fingers the right way. He's not commanding it as well. Okay, well, he can go cutter heavy. He can now go to the curveball or sweeper a little bit more. Like he has different ways that he can dominate you. And when that is the case for a pitcher, I feel a lot better about their floor and ceiling.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I think is interesting with him too is the cutter is kind of this tweener pitch in a way, right? Like it's got seven, at least in the big leagues, he had 7.5 inches of horizontal movement on the cutter, which you don't see cutters like that. I mean, that's edging onto that slider territory, right? Which is interesting because it is sharp though. He's still throwing it 92. Like it's not like it's like down in like the 89 range, right? It's still 92 when you're playing that off of a 98 four seam and a 97.5 sinker, right? So it's such an interesting trio of fastball variants that are all very different in their own right.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Like I think there was more of like a traditional sweeper he was throwing in the minor leagues at like the upper 80s, and then once he got to the show, there was like this like cutter morph to the sweeper where it's like he had more horizontal, it was harder, and it was like this blend of a pitch a little bit more. And I don't know if maybe those two like conflated or whatever it may have been, but it seemed to just be a much more effective way for him to attack hitters, a shorter, harder break, and especially with the way that he was able to command it. So I do think something like I think just working with the big league pitching coaches and just getting up there, they got really excited about the template that they could work with here. And this guy just got better and better each big league start because I think he started to figure out this new identity because he's a totally different pitcher than the guy that he was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And now this power pitcher with these variations of fastballs can utilize that in a different way. Because remember, when he was 3, 4, 5 ticks below, that cutter is 85, 86.
Right.
Now that cutter is
92.
92, and you can benefit from giving a little bit of that bigger break on a sweeper to have that shorter, harder, but still have some horizontal on the cutter. So it's just kind of reinventing yourself a little bit because of the new arm talent that you have unlocked. And I'm really excited to see what a full season looks like from him next year. But he got better and better as the year progressed.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to cross-check this, but I'm not sure how many guys in the bigs have a fastball they're throwing over 50% of the time and getting over 30% strikeout rate on it on a fastball. And batters are hit 178 against his fastball in the regular season this year. I mean, that's a next level heater, and then you pair it with two other fastball variants. It's just such a fun pitcher to watch. And that sweeper, like you said, like he still had some tagged as a sweeper. So I'm really curious to see what that looks like, whether the cutter, sweeper, slider, like what that blend looks like, because he still had 2.5% that were tagged as a sweeper, but at
Yeah.
88, right? It was 88 miles an hour and it was only 3 inches more horizontal than the cutter. So that's where it's just a really funky, interesting thing there.
Yeah, and think that's where there could be some blend. There could be,
Yeah,
I think it's a great bridge pitch that cutter, regardless for Schlittler, and
right.
that's what's scary though. Is like he can spin the ball like that still too, and he didn't even really dip into that too much because the fastballs were so good. And just to put in perspective, the last thing is how much better he was in the big leagues. In the
Yeah.
minor leagues, opponents hit 248 against his fastball, albeit with not a lot of success slug wise
Right.
and plenty of end zone whiff, but he got better with the heater as he got to the show.
Yeah, definitely. So that's the last guy we'll talk about that got to the big leagues. There's plenty of others, Peyton Tolley, Connelly early, like there's a lot of other guys, but wanted to highlight a lot of minor leaguers on this list.
Yeah.
So starting with these minor league batch, someone that jumped from not even close to top 100 to I'm curious where he'll be next time because he slowed down a bit later. But Edward Florentino
Yeah.
of the Pirates organization is a guy that jumped all the way to 31, I believe, on the top 100 at the midseason point this year with just an incredible first half of the year between multiple levels. He just put up a really ridiculous 18-year-old season. He was at the complex start of the year, makes his way to single A. While the numbers ticked down, they were still exceptional. He ended up having a little bit of an injury, ended his season. I think he had missed a handful of games, but 83 games on the year for Florentino with an OPS of 948 between the complex and single A, WRC plus at 159. He popped 16 homers, 35 stolen bases, and he's still 18. He hasn't turned 19 yet until this offseason. One of the more impressive 18-year-old seasons for sure.
Oh my gosh. It's funny. I think it all started for him. Like he got a late start to the year, I think, because of injury. And
Yeah.
so he played this extended spring training game against, I think, like the baseball Canada junior national team. And in that game, that was where the buzz. There was already a ton of buzz in spring training, and it's spring breakout and all that stuff. And so I was really eager to see him. And then just getting a little bit of that late start. That was kind of the first chance we got to see of him early in the year. And he goes 4 for 4 in that game with a double and a triple. It's like, okay, here we go. So then they ease him in with rookie ball, and I think clearly Florentino was just way too good for that. And then I was interested because pretty big kid, and patience was an advantage for him. And I think if you're a pretty big kid with patience at the complex, like sometimes you can just it raises your floor of production and you can be really solid. But he just did not slow down at all in low A. And if anything, he got better. And so that's where I really started to get excited. And then I think it was more, this is one of those guys where the visual, so I got the visual in person before the season, and then a couple times during the season, but just even video wise, you're watching the swings that he's getting off, and it's impossible not to get excited and start to fall in love with what could be offensively. Then you cross reference that with the data, and it's like, okay, this guy is a huge riser, and 90% zone contact. I think 89.4% maybe if you, it depends what day you started up from, but pretty much if you just take out the first couple games, it's 90% for most of the year. EV 90 of 104 miles per hour and a chase rate of 21%. Like, what else do you want to see from an 18-year-old kid who's still 18, doesn't turn 19 for another month? That's the stuff that was really impressive to me. The defense, I think there was a lot of people that were looking at him as maybe an iffy corner, could move to first base, and I don't think he sticks in center, maybe, but the fact that he has looked a lot better than I would have thought based on a lot of things I was hearing from other scouts. Like when I went out in there and saw him, I was like, this looks better than I think he gets credit for. And I think he's improved his athleticism a lot. So he's going to have every opportunity to try to play in center field. But if he's a decent corner with that bat, man, and I think a lot more power to still tap into, and then a 26% ground ball rate. When you're running 90% zone contact and nothing is going on the ground and you're air pulling like that at 18 years old, I think this guy's a monster. And like we're going to talk about lids and Bowman Chrome. I am livid that he's not in Bowman Chrome. I think that was a huge miss
Thought the
by
same thing.
Tops. And now his cards are it's gonna be too late. They're gonna be too expensive. I think by the time he's in Bowman. But that aside, he is a really fun prospect, and I I feel like at some point we got to start giving the Pirates credit, but I don't want to yet because I don't believe.
Not yet.
I think they're like, they say like a broken clock's right twice. I, this is interesting because it's more than twice now, but I don't know. I still don't know if I
We'll
can,
see.
if I like, I can see a tangible developmental change in Toronto with the pitching development. I don't know if that's what's happening in Pittsburgh. I hope it is, but there's no doubting that they've got guys.
Got
They've
some
got
freaks.
guys here,
Yeah.
and they're scouting well. I think they're scouting well at least.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because I've started getting back into cards a little bit lately because of our guys at Sports Card CEO they have doing this awesome show. They're getting me thinking about cards. They
They
also had
also
Mike
just had
Trout on.
Mike
Yeah,
Trout on.
go listen to that if you haven't listened. Sports Card CEO, they had freaking Mike Trout on the show, which was an awesome interview. But they got me thinking about cards, so I was cross-checking this list and starting to look up some guys' Bowmans, and I looked up Florentino, which is you mentioned, and I was like, "Where's Florentino?" So I've looked at a bunch of cards. I threw some bids in on a couple guys we're going to mention on this episode, but there was no Florentino, and I was upset. So
Yeah,
that was a bummer. But yeah, he's a stud. Also walked at a 14% clip, maintained the exact same walk rate pretty much between the complex and single A. He's patient. He didn't strike out a ton. 23% strikeout rate for the guy with his power at his age is very reasonable. So there's a lot to like here with Florentino.
100%. I think just the last, not the last, obviously he's 18 years old, but the next big key for him is going to be just being able to stay on, stay and maintain his direction, especially left on left, like that air pull ability and the bat path living in the zone for so long. It is definitely an asset for him, and it allows him to hammer breaking stuff and hard fastballs in because he has such a good feel for the barrel and a compact swing. But he does tend to leak out a little bit. The fact that the path is so good and the field of hit so good, he can make it work even if the body is leaking a little bit. But left on left, that's where he really, I think, starts to leave the ball. And that's where it created some issues for him. Like he was not good left on left this year at all. He hit 169 against lefties with a 479 OPS. Not a huge sample size, right? I mean, it's 10 for 59 there, but that also puts in perspective how good he was against righties, 1,054 OPS. So this guy mashes righties. He's in a pretty good spot there. If he can find a way to be semi-competitive against lefties, I think you feel really good about where he's at. But worst case, he's a righty killer. But I think he's got a lot of time to shore up those mechanics.
Definitely. Next guy on the list is someone who finished the season injured but broke out in the first half in a huge way. Mike Sirota of the Dodgers, originally drafted by the Reds in 2024 last season. This is a guy we've talked about it before, like he was top 5 projected in the draft before his last season of college at Northeastern and fell all the way to the third round. Reds scoop him up. Dodgers, of course, targeted him in the trade. They said, oh, this is a guy that we still see a ton of upside here. The beginning of the season before getting hurt, he played 59 games between single A and high A. The numbers are stupid. Like he was on like minor league player of the year track if he hadn't gotten hurt, right? Like it was that good. He put up an OPS almost 1100 OPS, a 190 WRC plus. He walked at an 18% clip, struck out at a 22% clip. Like he 13 homers in those 59 games. Sirota was about as good as any hitter in minor league baseball for the first half of the season.
Yeah, I'm bummed that he's not in the AFL because to me, I
Yeah.
don't like to speculate too hard, but to me that probably tells me that he's
Yeah.
just not ready or they didn't feel comfortable throwing him out there just yet with the knee issue. He hurt his knee sliding into second base in like July, so it would be a quick turnaround anyways. But I was hoping it was maybe a little bit more minor, and maybe it is, and they're just erring on the side of caution here. But with the year that he had to start off, I think that's a guy that you would love to send to the fall league.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, Gavin Lux is a player that filled your lineup and gave you above replacement level production. And at the time of the trade, I was a little bit more surprised by the comp pick. It, it,
Yeah.
it, it was both of them, right? If you're going to give up a comp pick, I wouldn't have given up Sirota. If you're going to give up Sirota, definitely wouldn't have given up a comp pick. But I didn't think they'd regret moving Sirota this much this quickly because
Yeah.
I did not see when he was a top 5 guy in the draft. I didn't really see it. I always when he fell to well, I didn't think he'd go to the third round. I always thought he'd be like a
Right.
late first, early second
Right.
round guy. I didn't see this power projection. I saw a guy that was solid glove in center field, good approach, fringy hit. Maybe it can grow into average power. Like I did not see this much power in there. And you could say, oh, maybe it's the environment. No, it doesn't really matter. He had an EV90 of 107 miles per hour in a 59 game sample. He had a hard hit rate of 54%. I did not see that at all. And we broke it down early in the year. He made some very tangible swing adjustments that really allowed him to tap into his lower half. And before, I think he was really just arm swinging. And that's why the EVs were so much lighter. But he wasn't like a huge, imposing guy with a ton of projection physically or anything like that. So I just didn't see plus power in there. But that's exactly what he was showing to all fields. And then on top of that, the approach just got even better. And I thought that was going to be the thing that could push him up to being a regular, right? Is okay,
Yeah.
if you're average or fringy hit, you're average power, you're above average defender in center field, and you're a good runner. If you got plus plate discipline, that can all kind of blend together there to be an average everyday center fielder. But that's what I kind of thought it would require. No, the approach is elite now to go with plus power. The hit to us still think will ultimately be fringy, but he destroys spin. And yeah, he'll be a little bit tardy on fastball, sometimes struggles to cover the top, but he has a great approach. And the defense looked pretty good up the middle. But I think could be really good in a corner. I can't wait to see a full season from this guy next year, assuming he's healthy. And I mean, this was a heck of a target by the Dodgers, who clearly saw something in
Yeah.
him in terms of there's a lot of power that's being left on the table here, and immediately figured out how to unlock it with him, which is really amazing to me. Like, it's one thing to identify a player, buy low, but that's how you really buy low on a player, is trading for a prospect where you already have a plan to get more out of him. And I'm sure Sirota deserves a lot of the credit there too, but I don't think it's a coincidence that he gets acquired, makes these mechanical changes, and becomes this guy that clearly the Dodgers thought he could be.
Yeah, 100%. 32 extra base hits in 59 games to start his professional career this year. Ridiculous stuff. I mean, that's just super, super exciting. And he'll be healthy next year, and he's one of the many, many Dodgers outfielders who we could have mentioned, and could be talking about it. We'll be talking about this offseason because there's 6 or 7 really, really good outfielders in that system right now.
Oh yeah, big time.
Uh, Next guy up, you mentioned off the top here a little bit, Rainel Rodriguez of the St. Louis Cardinals organization, 18-year-old catcher who started the season in the complex, like some of these other guys we've talked about, made his way all the way to high A for the very end of the season. Rodriguez was ridiculous in the complex, got to single A, and wasn't as good, but was very, very good at the single A level for the majority of his season. 84 games total between complex, single A, and high A, a 162 WRC plus for Rodriguez. He had an on base percentage of 400, OPS 954. Just was very good. 20 home runs on the year, and a lot of those coming in single A, and just mashed and put himself on the radar as a guy he's not 18, he's not 19 until next year, 2026, the beginning of 26, right? So there's a lot of upside here for Rodriguez.
Yeah, this was a guy I was probably just too slow on.
Yeah.
We
Come on, man, catch up.
I know might have been a whiff by me. I just there was a few things. I think watching him defensively, I was just a bit skeptical, especially going off of the video that I had access to in the DSL. But of course, those things can change pretty quickly. He made a mockery of the rookie league, and then quickly just showed a lot of the same things in high A. But I had some concern about just like the underlying whiff against secondaries and especially early on. But what I just continued to see from him was, okay, yeah, he may swing and miss at some well-located secondaries, but he doesn't chase that much. And when they're hangers, they're gone. So if you destroy fastballs and you destroy hangers and you don't chase, at really anything outside of the zone, like the approach was really impressive. Okay, sure. If a pitcher executes 3 sliders on the corner, he'll get you. He'll get everybody. So it is something to monitor because low A breaking balls are not the same as high A and double A breaking balls, and of course big league breaking balls. So like the contact rates against those pitches, I definitely want to see improve. But I think what we saw from him is just he can hit the ball in the air to the pull side with the best of them at those levels. The exit velocities crept up way higher than I would have thought. I mean, he was popping 112s. He had an EV90 of 105. And you pair that with the angles that he's producing at. Like, sure, I think if you're a guy that's selling out for air pull, maybe you'll pull off those sliders here and there a little bit. But I think it's a lot easier to train. Okay, how do I stay on this pitch a little bit longer? Then how do I pull 99 on my hands, up and out of the yard? How do I make sure that I don't miss mistakes? And those were all things that he was doing this year at 18 years old, as you mentioned. So, yeah, and I'm not sure how the defense looks. So, like, I think he improved enough to, earn himself a case here. I think the pocket awareness is a little bit iffy sometimes. The blocking can get a little bit better. The catch and throw is pretty good. But what made him a no doubt top 100 guy for me after I was probably a little bit slow on this was that the bat has now looked so good that even if he can't stick a catcher or even if he's a fringy catcher, the bat alone makes him a top 100 guy.
Yeah, he raked, and it's gonna be fun to see him. I assume because he finished there, he'll start in high A, and he'll still be like a young 19 starting the year in high A next year. Like that's a guy who we could see as that next 19-year-old hitter in Double A potentially by next season, which
100%.
is crazy to think about because we're getting more and more of those every season. It feels like right now.
Yeah, it might be closer and closer to the new norm with how crazy some of these guys are, at such a young
Some
age.
freaks. Yeah,
Yep.
some freaks for sure. Next guy up is another 19-year-old. When a lot of these guys we're talking about are young guys because it's these breakouts happen early and often. Nate George in the Orioles organization is a name that we talked about once earlier in the season. Definitely have gotten some Discord love on him. And this was a 16th round high school guy who the Orioles overslotted last year. They had some money left over from some earlier picks. This is the guy they targeted in the late round to spend a little bit of extra money on in the draft. And it's very clear why now because he didn't play a game last year. This season in 87 games between complex, single A, and then high A, split almost, pretty evenly among the three, put up an overall WRC plus of 159. He hit 337, just straight up batting average. I don't mention it too often, but like he hit 337 this season between the three levels. Got on base just all the time, honestly. The power is still coming along, only 5 home runs, but 50 stolen bases. If you're a guy at this age and this level who can walk, can get on base a ton, and then when you get on base, can steal bags with the best of them. 50 stolen bags in his first pro season. There's a lot to like here, and if you see a tick up in power, then you've got a really, really exciting piece here in Nate George.
It's crazy because, I think it's another just good, impressive scouting example here by the Orioles and on the high school side when they do go there, I think they do a pretty good job. But it's he's an interesting one for me because I I I feel it's like the Justin Crawford thing a little bit where I look at the swing
Mm.
and I look at just some of the underlying data and I'm like, I don't know if I see that totally translating, but then you look at the numbers and it's like, oh, I feel like an asshole. Just trying to say that this 410 OBP and 483 slug is a 19-year-old. He was 18 at the start of the season between complex low A and high A. Like, oh, I'm not sold. But there's a lot to like here because he was a multi-sport athlete in high school and he kind of looks like a guy that is played a bunch of sports and kind of relied on athleticism to play baseball. But the fact that he can look that way and produce the way that he did is incredibly impressive. I think mechanically, there's going to be some things that he needs to clean up. Like he definitely struggles to get around on heaters, and he's very much like in his quads, which I think can make it just difficult to hit the ball in the air hard, and sometimes can cause him to get crowded on the inner half. But like I think it just is a testament to the athleticism here, where the mechanics can kind of it looks like he's in his way sometimes and he still hit 335. So there's just a natural hitting ability here. He can spoil tough pitches. There's this inside out swing is really the funny thing where like a lot of his extra base hits were the other way. So I think that kind of shows some bat speed and the ability to just kind of still fillet balls that can carry. But I just feel like if he can clean up the mechanics and start to pull the ball just a little bit more frequently with authority, you wonder even how much more power he can unlock. But the other thing too is stole a ton of bases, not the most
Yeah.
efficient in that regard, but he did steal a ton of bases. So like that's another area that he could probably shore up a little bit. But for a guy that really I thought was just skating on athleticism to turn in the year that he had while being challenged across levels has really elevated his stock. And he could be a guy that ends up cleaning up some of the mechanics. And then all of a sudden, George is, a top 100 guy next year.
Yeah. Do you see it in center? I don't know how much you've gotten to look at the defense. I haven't looked at the defense much, but he played mostly center with some left and right mixed in throughout the year.
Yeah, I think he has a shot there, like because of
Yeah.
the athleticism. But again, it's a guy that like was relying on the athleticism, where the reads weren't great, the jumps weren't great, but then the closing speed and athleticism to finish the play was good enough to survive. But I do think the reads are going to need to get a lot better this offseason, spring training, to project as a guy that can stick up there, and that would help his profile a lot too, of course.
Yeah, makes sense for sure. Before we get into the next batch of names, let's take a quick break.
Before we jump into these prospect names, I want to let you know about our friends at Lids. We are just talking Bowman Chrome, and Lids has Bowman Chrome for you. They also, you may know that they had the Topps Chrome, and that was a big fun release with us where we were able to go rip some cards with Griffin Conine in Miami. We're going to do something similar with Bowman Chrome in Arizona in the next week or so. So stay tuned for that. We have a lot of fun details on that front. We'll do a little meet and greet, player signing, and we'll be ripping some Bowman Chrome cards. But the best part about this is Bowman specifically can always be difficult to find, especially for retail cost at retail cost. And Lids is now a place that could be the easiest to potentially be able to pick those up. They have 101 different Lids locations that will be carrying those Bowman Chrome, and they have a site as well that we'll link in the episode description that can help you find which Lids locations are carrying the Bowman Chrome hobby boxes. But you got to pay a lot of money usually for hobby boxes, and you usually have to deal with the marked up prices and other things along with the fact that it's just hard to pick up the cards. And Bowman's a really fun product, right? You got a lot of first Bowmans, IFA signings. Cam Schlittler is in Bowman Chrome. So there's a lot of fun chases within that, but you get to pay retail prices for these boxes versus paying marked up at secondhand shops or missing out on pre-sales. And the best part is if you text baseball, BASEBALL to 29017, you'll receive 20% off your next headwear or apparel purchase. And there's a lot of cool stuff. I know Elijah was rocking the hat the other day from the fall selection, but like all you got to do to get that discount, 29017, you text baseball to that number and just no skin off your back, just super easy way to get a discount. But also stay tuned if you're in the Arizona area. Come hang out with us, Scottsdale area, most likely, that we'll be doing this, and we'll be ripping Bowman Chrome and hanging out with a prospect that I think will be pretty fun for you. And let me know if you go to Lids and pick up any Bowman Chrome boxes. Let me know what you pull out of that because there's some fun chases in that checklist.
Getting back into our prospects here that broke out this season, we've got a pair of Milwaukee Brewers, and we could have had more than a pair of Milwaukee Brewers, to be perfectly honest. I had one guy on here, and then I realized the second guy, who is actually a top 15, 20 prospect in baseball now, wasn't even top 100 entering the season, which is crazy to think about right now. So Marco Dingus is one example of a guy who was a total breakout from the standpoint of being a fourth round pick last season, but didn't expect nearly this production early from him. On the flip side, Luis Peña was a 2024 international signing who went from not top 100 to instantly top 30 within a couple months this season, frankly, because he had a good DSL showing last year, very good. And then this year in single A just showed everything that we thought he could show after the DSL last year. So a fun duo here from the Brewers, who were both in single A most of the year and really just shined.
I think with Peña, it was even more like he showed some things that I didn't even know if he was going to show
Right.
that quickly. And we talked about that with Brenton Del Chiaro of the Brewers organization, the assistant director of player development there. And they identified some things in spring training with Peña to use the ground more effectively, tap into more power. Like in the DSL, he looked like a slash and dash guy, and a really good one though. Like tons of stolen bases, tons of contact, really good bat to ball, enough gap to gap power. But then he emerges this year, and all of a sudden you see all the qualities that you loved in terms of the way he controls his at bats and just the potential with the speed. And but he's running a EV90 for a good portion of the season of like 106. He ended up finishing at like 104, but still, I'm like, holy crap, where did this power come from an 18-year-old? And it really was refining those mechanics. He dealt with some injuries. It was a lot of games for him to play also as well in 95 this year. And so he ran into some trouble at the end of the year and kind of limped to the finish line. But overall, this was a phenomenal year from him. And I think the one thing that we saw is like Slider started to chew him up at the end of the year as he tried to handle high A. It's a big leap for an 18-year-old. And, Jesus Mate is a switch hitter. You had a little bit of an easier landing there, but still, I mean, Peña to maintain those contact rates and then add all of this power. It was just remarkable to see, him be able to do all of that. So you add that to the equation, and I mean, this is a really dynamic prospect. Now we'll get a second taste of high A here, next year. And then Dingus is I think even more underrated in the respect that, fourth round pick, a guy that I think was looked as a bat first catcher and still is, but when the bat now looks like this, it's a lot easier to get it, bullish on the bat first catcher profile. I know he put up some of the best bat speed on a lot of the internal tests in the entire Brewers organization, and it's easy to understand how when he ran an EV90 of 107.5 miles per hour this year and a hard hit rate of 49%. So, just a monster year from him. I think, when you saw him start the year at low A as a college bat, you say, okay, well, let's see you do it against more challenging pitching. He did it against high A pitching too, and the data continued to be really good. So I think the big thing for him is just watching how much he can develop behind the dish, because I think there's no doubt about the power, and the fact that he showed the power while running a strikeout rate of 19.5%. I think the hit tool is going to be average at best ultimately, but it's a really good starting point there.
Yeah, and he's, one of those fun AFL candidates that you're going to see this week when you're in person because he's a
Oh yeah.
great example of someone that you like. You saw all the breakout this year, and then these breakout players, especially some of the slightly older ones, let's see it against this competition level in the Arizona Fall League, right? It's a perfect place for a guy like this who is a 22-year-old college guy. He has experience. He had such a great season, but it was low A and high A for a college guy, right? Let's see him against a handful of really fun pitching prospects and see what that looks like.
Yeah, and that's why I'm excited. And I think the double A test is going to be great for him. But remember, the ball actually flies a little bit in Biloxi. I
Yeah,
think the ball obviously flies in Arizona, so I'm excited to see that. I'm going to be more focused on the defense for him out in
yeah.
Arizona and just seeing how he moves behind the dish. Of course, those like specific matchups that you get against top flight arms will be fun. But I think double A will be a fun test. And with the way that he hits the ball hard in the air, he might hit that jet stream out there in Biloxi. And I think we could see some big slug numbers. So 22 years old until the end of next season. Still, even though they were a little bit slower with him as a fourth round college bat, you could still end up being on a pretty standard timeline.
Yeah, definitely. This next one we've talked about plenty, and I think it's really a pretty good example of this category of breakout. Jacob Reimer in the Mets organization, and yes, we could have mentioned Jonah Tong and many of the other guys in the Mets org. I know we've talked about them a lot, so I went with Reimer for this one because when you look at what a breakout means, right? This is a guy whose first pro year in 2023, he had a decent season, but it wasn't anything crazy. He was solid in single A, got up to high A, struggled a little bit. A traditional first season from a high school pick. 2024, he misses the majority of the season with injury, barely plays, right? Comes into this year with pretty minimally on the radar, I would say, across the board
Yeah.
for people, and then puts up a season where he split exactly 61 games in each high A and double A. And was just exceptional at both levels. He was really, really good all season. You saw the power, 17 home runs, some pretty strong, loud numbers from him there. Strikeout rate was in check. He walked at a good clip, got on base well. Like it was offensively just a great season from Reimer on someone who wasn't on the radar after an injured season and an okay season in his first two pro seasons.
No doubt about it. And this was a guy I think I wrote about in Reimer in May in the article of like hitting prospects whose stock was rising because there was just so many impressive swings I saw through the first month, and then so I wanted to put the side by side. I'm like, well, why wasn't he doing this before? And I mean, it was night and day with the mechanics. I mean, he was previously really stacked on his backside, and like the back knee would bow out towards home. So when you start that way, and your back knee's kind of bowed out towards the catcher, right? Like you can only really push forward from that spot. And I think it made it really hard for him to hold his weight back. And now he's more upright with the cue being a coil into his backside, not trying to preset himself there. And that's allowed him to get to the slot pretty easily and stay there. And just being able to repeat that move, and you saw the success out of it. Like when you have the tangible mechanical adjustment and then this breakout to go with it, it really helps me buy into it as well. And then the fact that he's still just 21 years old, you mentioned very injury plagued the year before. So it kind of was a lost year for him. And then to do what he did. And it felt like each level, when he has climbed now, there's a little bit of like a get your feet wet, get acclimated, and then he'd go crazy. And I think you saw the same thing in double A, like a little bit of struggle, get your feet wet, get acclimated. Then he really finished well again. And, contact rates were above average. Chase rate was below average. EVs were well above average, and he hit the ball in the air way more than ever because he's controlling his weight so much better. The big thing for him is can he stick at third? And I'm excited to see more defensive reps from him and just be able to watch him do that. But I mean, this is a player that in Reimer that sprinted through the finish line in the postseason for Binghamton as well, and I think really looks like an exciting power bat in this Mets organization.
Yeah, definitely. The next guy is one I'm hoping we're a little early on this one because he's starting to get some buzz for sure. And I only included one DSL guy because it's hard to really gauge DSL numbers. We could have had a number of other guys in here. Elian Peña is another one. There's a bunch of others, but I went with Josuar Gonzalez of the Giants organization because he's one you've mentioned before as just someone you're really keyed in on here from this DSL class who's going to make his way stateside this year. He's in Bowman Chrome. I know that's a big chase for a lot of people for sure. He's one of the top chases, definitely. The numbers aren't like insane, especially for DSL standards, right? Like he had an OPS of around 850. He got on base at a good clip. He walked at a very good clip. Stolen bases were exceptional. Seems like a very good athlete. What is it about Gonzalez though that kind of sticks out to you as one of these DSL guys who we're really gonna keep an eye on going into next year?
I think it's the advanced nature of his game, like you were talking about earlier, right? Where you're like, oh, we got to get used to these guys flying up through the minor leagues. I think this is another guy that could easily do that, and it's just this well-rounded nature to the game as well. Where, yes, it's a higher floor relative to I think a lot of other players that you see at that age, but I don't think it compromises the ceiling either. Like he's flashing above average power. He looks like he could play an above average, shortstop as well. And then you look at the just the approach, the bat to ball, all those little things. And it's like, okay, this is a dynamic player across the board. So I think that's the part that makes me really excited about him is you look at the numbers and the data and the swings and the visuals, like everything looks good from that perspective. But the fact that you can dream on a switch hitter here with at least average power, with really good bat to ball skills, with a good approach and good defense at shortstop, even if some of these other aspects of his game, maybe the power stalls out and it's fringy, and the hit tool is not plus and it's above average. Well, the glove can end up really carrying, and picking up the slack. Or maybe the glove doesn't totally come along the way that we think it will, but he taps into above average power or he taps into plus hit. Like all of these different wrinkles and ways that he can be an above average player, I think is what makes his floor high. There's a lot of different ways where he can accumulate WAR, but then you also have the dream of, well, what if it happens across the board? And this could be a guy that's like 50s to 55s across the board. And if he's that as a switch hitter at shortstop, it's a really dynamic player. So I think you have that ceiling floor combination that makes, Gonzalez, I think it's DeJesus Gonzalez now. I've seen it both ways. Just such a fun player to watch and be excited about. And, I think the last thing on him too is better from the left side. Always love to see that 830 OPS this year from the left side, but he was solid from the right side as well, 770 OPS. So I always like to see the splits go that way. If you're going to favor one side a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him get over stateside. I think now that I'm really all the way tapped in on this prospect stuff, I love watching and preparing for these DSL guys to come over and to see what they look like because it just we don't have a ton of information. Like you have some more access and are able to see some things, but it's like it's not quite the same as actually being able to
I'm
watch
also
minor league games, right?
also the data. Here's the sample:
Right.
600. So I have 925 pitches here, where 608 of them are fastballs. So, excuse me, actually, that's four seamers. 73% of the pitches he saw were
Wow.
fastballs that averaged
Yeah.
90 miles per hour. So yeah, like he
Yeah.
was, you can only compare him to his peers, but that that's not really challenging competition here. So yeah, even with the data that we have, you have to like take that data with a grain of salt because it's okay. He's seeing more than 2/3 fastballs at 90 miles per hour. Like he's not going to see that ever again. So that's what makes scouting on the DSL side so difficult. And sometimes you don't want to be too bullish. But another reason why I'm excited about him because of all the different ways that he can impact the game. If it was those bat first guys that are mashing in the DSL, that's why I'm a little bit like speaking of Bowman Chrome, like Chris Rodriguez in the Tigers system, very popular chase, power over hit, DSL guy that was putting up massive power numbers out there. Uh, is he going to put up the same power numbers when he's not seeing 70% fastballs and 90 miles an hour? Maybe, but I can't be, pursuing those cards aggressively until I see him maybe even just do that at the complex. So that's
Yeah.
why when I'm looking at DSL guys, I skew towards the tools across the board.
That's some good insight for sure for people that are trying to gauge DSL numbers because it's incredibly hard to
It's
gauge numbers
impossible.
from the DSL. Yeah,
It's impossible.
exactly.
That's how a
Uh,
junior Caminero gets sniped, man.
Yep, that's how it goes. The next guy up is a pitcher who ended up being mid-section of our top 100 by mid-season because he really jumped off the page to start the year. Gage Jump in the A's organization is someone who was a what was he third Comp B pick last year. I was gonna say third round, but basically between second and
Same
third round
thing.
there. And he spent last season at LSU. This year, it was an exciting profile coming into the draft, but he took expectations and shattered them pretty quickly when he got to the minor leagues. I mean, he made 6 appearances in high A to start the year, with like I think it was like a 40%, almost a nearly 40% strikeout rate, ERA around 2. It was crazy. He gets to high A or for double A, pardon me, for the rest of the season, and the numbers ticked down a little, but even in double A, it was still very, very good from Jump, and the stuff just ticked in a way that you detailed earlier in the season really well. But the stuff ticked up in a huge way for Jump this season.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the fastball get better, yeah, a tick and a half harder with good characteristics. The fastball was always great though, and I think this is an example of maybe just drafting a good left-handed fastball plays, and I think it's part of the reason why we saw Liam Doyle go so high. But why I like Jump is its deception and characteristics now paired with the uptick in velocity. Right, he averaged 93 in college in his draft year, but that fastball was dominant. So if you felt like he was an uptick candidate, which he was, now he averaged 94 and a half this year. You know that you don't have to really change anything with the fastball. Like it's going to play up even more. And that's exactly what happened. But what was impressive to me was just how much more he diversified his arsenal so quickly. You had the pair of breaking balls that immediately, made an impact. The slider in the mid 80s and the curveball at 80 miles an hour, distinctly different shapes, 5 miles per hour apart. And that curveball was not good for him in college, and the slider was okay. So just to have those pitches sharpened and adjusted shape wise and a little bit harder, and the command of them so much better, that helped a ton. He started to sprinkle in a changeup that I would like to see come along a little bit further, but at least you could sprinkle that in. And then again, the fastball was as good as ever, and that was a pitch that he was throwing 2/3 of the time and having a lot of success with in college. So I think the A's continue to be one of the most underrated drafters, and this is another great example of that. And he looks like he could be a middle rotation arm, but at worst, you have a 4 here that gives you flashes of more. And then maybe sometimes he's a little bit too fastball dependent. The execution can come and go. But I thought the fastball execution was so good this year that it really raised his floor, and the secondaries just came along so much. It's a really fun arm that I think could get up for them next year, right? I mean, he hit a little bit of a snag at points in the Texas League. I thought he got just fatigued. It was a lot of innings for him, and they ended up sprinting through the finish line anyways. He made 2 postseason starts in Double A to wind down the year. He went 10 1/3 innings, 16 punchies for Jump, and 4 walks. He only gave up 2 earned runs in those 2 playoff outings. So, I mean, he clearly dug down for a little bit more, and after hitting a little bit of a wall and finished the year strong. But I think there's just some fatigue at the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Did he mix in anything? Because I know when I've seen him pitch, I feel like it's pretty much all the fastball and 2 breaking balls. Does he have a fourth offering, or is
It's
it
just
just
that
mostly?
change up at about like 8% of
Okay,
the time. That looks like it doesn't have to be a great pitch in a
right.
vacuum
Mix and match. Yeah.
because the fastball is so good and he's so deceptive. So it was just a low strike rate. So if he can increase that strike rate, from 50% to 57, 58, where they just have to respect it a little bit, I think that can give him another layer. But I don't think he necessarily needs it with the 2 distinct breaking balls and the great fastball.
Right.
But of course, would be nice to unlock that other layer.
Yeah, definitely. One more quick break before we finish out with a handful more names here.
Before we jump back into it, just want to tell you about our friends at Ethos Life Insurance. Life can come at you quick, and I've been, unfortunately had to take that on the last couple of years, and you lose loved ones close to you, and all of a sudden you think, well, how will my family be when my time hopefully doesn't come anytime soon, but does come? How can I make sure that my family is taken care of? And that's where Ethos Life Insurance comes in. Ethos is an online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes. There's no complicated process. It's 100% online. No medical exam required. You just answer a few health questions. You can get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. You can have same day coverage without ever leaving your house. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies as low as $2 per day, billed monthly. Ethos is a trustworthy company that disrupts the traditional life insurance industry. As of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. 3 million families have completed their applications and trusted Ethos to help them find the right coverage. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 2,400 reviews. And to protect your family with Ethos with life insurance, get a free quote at ethos.com/justbaseball. That's ethos.com/justbaseball. One word there, JUSTBASEBALL. Application times may vary, rates may vary.
Jumping back into the rest of our first batch of breakouts from this episode, we've got a pair of Kansas City Royals pitchers at the lower levels who we talked about on this show before because both these guys are really intriguing. Starting with David Shields, he was a second-round pick of the Royals out of high school last season, and he went from being a guy that was on the radar as a highly paid second-round pick to a guy that was one of the best pitchers at low levels this season. He pitched 18 games in Single A on the year, had a 2.01 ERA. The strikeout rate was nearing 30%, walk rate at just 5%. Shields just was one of the best pitchers in Single A this season, and I think there's still a lot more to dream on for him as well.
Oh yeah, I think that's the part that's exciting, right? It's like, okay, how much more could be in there? Very young for the class. He just turned 19 years old a month ago, and to turn in the year that he turned in was really impressive because he's really sitting 90, 91 miles per hour. The fastball averaged 90.2 this season. But so athletic on the mound. He was a switch hitter as a position player. And you can just see the way that he moves and the balance that he has is really impressive. Creates this crossfire delivery that I think adds to the deception of that fastball. The ability to locate it at a near 70% strike rate also stands out. And then he's got the curveball off of it that really performed well for him as well. So that two pitch mix was really what dominated for him with the deception and the command. But he mixed in a changeup that I thought looked pretty good and flashed, solid third offering. It just the command of it wasn't totally there, so to be expected with a young arm there. But to strike out 28.5% of batters and walk only 4% of batters, 4.5% of batters is just remarkable at an 18-year-old season where he only made one start at the complex after a little bit of a late start. I mean, if he can tick up to even 92, 91, 92, I think you start to really get confident in that back end of the rotation profile. And I think there's a good chance as he matures here, there's a little bit more room to fill out. There's not a ton of effort in the delivery that he can continue to tick up. If you see that fastball sit more in the 92, 93 range in the next couple years and that changeup comes along, this is a really high floor back into the rotation type of arm that maybe has a little bit more potential as a middle rotation arm if you can find a little bit more bite with the secondary stuff. But that curveball plays, man, and it was a really impressive year from a very advanced young arm.
Yeah, what's interesting with Shields is in this day and age, like he kind of gives me the idea of the type of pitcher where it's like he's so young that like would we be shocked to see him just tick up 3 miles an hour in the next year or two, 4 miles an hour, and become like an elite pitching prospect? Because I wouldn't be shocked to see that. He has such good makings as you talk about there, right? Like it's a low slot. He gets some good ride, it seems like, to that fastball. I don't know if you have numbers on it, but it looks like he really gets some good characteristics on both the fastball and the curveball. Mixes in that changeup like you mentioned, but he's got this funky little leg kick, almost not quite crochet, but kind of that similar lefty leg kick where it's a little bit of an aggressive leg kick. Like if something clicks, whether it's mechanically or just strength wise, and he becomes a mid 90s guy, that's a
Oh,
really, really nice profile. I'm not saying he's gonna get there. That's obviously would be the highest possible outcome, but like even a couple ticks on that fastball, you go from a back end guy to a really projectable young left-hander.
well, I think you see what Robbie Snelling path, and I
Yeah.
think you look at Shields and you say, well, maybe that could be in the cards, right? And,
Yeah.
Snelling, the shape got better as he progressed, but both really athletic. Both were young for the class. Obviously, Snelling's first year was tough to beat. But then he had his little detour, and maybe Shields is a little bit of a softer launch, even though this was a ridiculous year. Maybe if he's in the Padres org, they push him more aggressively, and
Yep.
maybe there's not as much of a detour because the pitchability's there. But no, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see more. He gets above average extension already. Like you said, he works down the mound well, where it is a below average release, and then the run and ride. And maybe he can maybe find more true ride, and then more of a true two seamer as well. Like there's some things that maybe he can just even optimizing shapes with the athleticism and the way that he moves on the mound that can just help him gain even more. But this is a template here where I'm looking at, I'm saying this
Yep.
guy could explode, and maybe he doesn't next year, and maybe it's still low 90s, but I still think you'd be heading in the right direction and continuing to climb up. But he's a guy that, yeah, he could explode and be one of the biggest risers or breakout names, going into next year as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the other guy in the Royals org is Kendry Chourio, who's a whole year younger than Shields. He turned 18 last week. Happy late birthday to Kendry Chourio. Just turned 18 years old. And he struggled a bit when he came into affiliated ball, when he got to single A. He had a couple rough starts, but he started in the DSL this year. Then they pushed him to the complex. Then they brought him to single A, right? And yes, the numbers in single A ticked a little down. He had a couple starts where he got hit hard. The command is crazy for Chourio between 14 appearances between DSL Complex and Single A. He ran a 2.4% walk rate. Even when he got to Single A, it was a 4% walk rate. Maintained a strikeout rate around 30% on the year. He's just like there's still a lot more to see from him. And I think next year might be the full breakout. So I'm not even sure he quite qualifies as a breakout. But I think anytime you're walking
Right.
2.5% of guys at 17 years old, that still is a breakout.
I think if anytime you go from the DSL to low A
Yeah,
in the same
exactly.
year, it's
Yep.
probably a breakout. Like
Yep.
he made a start in the DSL on July 1st, and by July 31st, he was in low A in
Yeah.
Columbia, South Carolina. Like, you know, the makeup that must be with this kid too for the confidence to take him from the Dominican to straight to low A, and you're on your
Yep.
own kid at 17 years old. I'm sure he had a lot of resources and help, but like, man, that's a big leap for a kid. Now, forget the baseball side of things. How about the life side of things? But yeah, the fastball, I mean, it's impressive. Average 95. The curveball is sharp, and then he flashed a really good changeup. It's a three pitch mix that, as he ages here, could progress into middle rotation type of stuff if it all works out. The fact that he's sitting 95 at 17 years old is just stupid. And then you have that curveball that was just dominant across all levels this year. The opponents were 3 for 48 against it, 234 OPS. So if that changeup command could come along a little bit more as well, he could be a monster. And across all those levels, 68 punch outs, 7 walks. Like, I mean, it's just crazy stuff there. And you
Yeah.
got postseason innings there. Like, that's what's also added in. Like, he made a fantastic start against Myrtle Beach,
Hmm.
5 innings, a 1 run ball. And then he got roughed up in his final postseason appearance, but he got 2 postseason starts as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot about what the Royals think about him as not only a pitcher, but as a person.
I think, yeah, 100% I agree with you on that point. The movement there from DSL to single A is very rare to see at all. I think Shields and Chourio combined have totally different profiles, and they're both like it's hard to find a more fun like teenage pitching duo right now than those two in that organization. I think they'll both, I think Shields probably makes the jump to high potentially. Chourio repeats single A for sure, and like that's a really fun young pair of a righty and a lefty there as teenage pitching prospects.
Oh, no doubt. They've got some fun prospects coming up through that system on the pitching side all of a sudden as well.
Yeah, for sure. Next guy up is one of my guys in the White Sox organization. This is someone who I've watched pretty much every start of his this season just because it was so fun to see the growth from him. Tanner McDougal for the White Sox was a guy who was on prospect radar more 2-3 years ago. He was a high school draft pick in 2022 or 2021 actually. Went through came up, had TJ, came back in 23. Really took him a little while to find his footing. Had a really rough 2024, so he was out of the top 30 most places for the White Sox. Comes into this season and hi, I heard really good things about him in spring training. The velo had ticked up, the stuff had ticked up, all these reviews. And I was like, all right, let's see it. It comes in and splits the season between high A and double A, finishes the year with a 3.23 RA, a strikeout rate pushing 30%. The command is better than it had ever been at any point. And the velo ticked up to high 90s from a guy who always had a good fastball, but went from, I think about, you all probably can cross check this, but like, I think he was like 94, 95 most of last season. This season, he was like sitting 98, 99 for much of the year. Pairs that with a really heavy downer curveball is around 80. The changeup came a decent way. The slider, he really started to implement more this season. But really, McDougal, the velo tick up and just the stuff, just taking a whole nother level, made him a huge breakout in that system.
Yeah, and he threw harder as the year progressed. I think it was
Yep.
96-ish last year, and then now it
Yep.
was 98 on average this year. But you look at the last 5 starts, he was averaging 98.7.
Yeah.
So what I like now is you look at McDougal and you say, okay, well, this guy's at least solidified himself as a big league reliever and potentially
Yep.
like a leverage arm. That curveball is a banger, and I almost think it's too much of a banger for him. He needs to
Yeah.
kind of like maybe shorten it and throw it a little bit harder so he can land it for a strike more frequently. But good news is he can spin that thing at 3,000
Yep.
RPM. And the sliders was a really good pitch for him this year, and I think it was a little bit of an easier throw for him in the upper 80s. So it's a great 3 pitch mix, and like that fastball being as good as it has been from a velocity standpoint. I think he's a velocity dependent guy. Like the shape is okay, so the fact that
Right.
he's now sitting in the upper 90s, I think is great, and that can really help his case as a starter. But man, you have the fallback here now as a guy. You could put him in the bullpen. It could be closer stuff. Like he could be sitting 100. So. I think just the clear breakout with McDougal here is he's turned himself into I think a guaranteed big league piece. It's just in what capacity, and that's really exciting.
And that's exactly the jump there that I was watching. Because last season it was like, okay, this guy's always had some fun stuff, but it was like this isn't even a reliever with where his command was at last year.
Or
The
like a
walk rate
middle
was,
reliever,
you
maybe.
know,
Yeah,
it was like maybe he fills some innings in the back of a bull and the last guy on a
yeah,
bullpen type of thing.
18% walk rate on the fastball when he was going to it, like is crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. And then this year, it's like you see the stuff tick up with the velo tick up with the two breaking ball combo. My initial thought this year was like, okay, at the very least, he's taken the step to being back end reliever. And if he sticks as a starter, great. They're going to bring him into spring training as a starter. He's going to compete for a rotation spot. He's 40-man eligible. He's Rule 5 eligible this offseason. So everything I've heard is that he's going to be competing for a big league job out of camp. If you want to do the Grant Taylor thing, like if that's your fallback where you just make him a reliever in the back end, that's a legitimate fallback here. If you want to try him as a starter, even if it's for a year or two, if it doesn't work out, you know you have a very good bullpen arm here potentially. And if he can make starts and be a guy who can, Dylan cease you almost through 5 innings of quality ball, even if he has some days with a command leak, he could also make that work for sure.
100%. I think that's where you're the White Sox. You're just trying to find big league pieces,
Yeah.
right? Like just
Yeah.
continue to stockpile big league pieces with 6 years of control. And
Yep.
here's another one way or another. And I think that's exciting going into next year.
Yeah, especially a guy that wasn't even, not even top 30, and now he's one of the better prospects in the system probably after this season. So, last guy on our list today, switching to the other side of Chicago, is Jaxon Wiggins of the Cubs organization. And it's funny because this is a little bit of a cheat. I said no top 100, no just missed. I think he technically was just missed for us to start the season because you already kind of really, you had already been
He
in
was a
on him
breakout
last.
candidate for me though too. Like that was
There
when
you
we
go.
revisit. This will be my pat on the back. Like he was
Yeah.
my breakout pick, and yeah, that fastball is one of the best fastballs in minor league baseball. It's 97 up to 100, but the run and ride that he creates from his release point for such a tall guy is pretty crazy. Opponents had a 497 OPS against him this year. The
Oof.
slider is gross as a gyro slider from a taller frame, and the changeup, I want to see him throw it more. It's crazy. Like the changeup working off of that fastball picked up an in zone whiff rate of 47%. So think about that. Zone contact for hitters was 53% against that pitch, and he
Nasty.
landed it for a strike at a 63% rate. And I think, look, the command needs to get a little bit better, but overall, the fastball command was pretty good. The changeup command was pretty good. If you can get that slider command to come along a little bit more, you feel really good about his chances as a starter. But this is another guy that, okay, if it doesn't work as a starter for Wiggins, he might be one of my favorite closers in the game. Like that's how good the fastball is.
Yeah.
And at 6'7", and it's so low effort too. It's so easy to get that run and ride that he does from like a pretty flat angle. It's just unique, and I feel like hitters really struggled against that. I don't even need to say I feel like they hit
They
164
did.
against it. They chased it at a 30% clip. It dominated at the top, but even when he wore it out at the bottom, hitters weren't doing much with it there either. So he's going to be a piece of the big league equation for them next year. He's a big reason why the Cubs didn't make a more impactful trade at the deadline because teams like the Diamondbacks and some others wanted pitching prospects, and the Cubs said we don't have a ton of them, and the one that we really really like, he ain't going nowhere. And I understand why.
Yeah, and it's crazy you mentioned the reliever thing because like if they had said like screw it, we need him, he could be leverage arm innings right now for the Cubs in the playoffs. Like that's how good it would be as a reliever, and that's how good that fastball is, and those two those two off speed right. Like he in the bullpen could be like genuinely pitching in the playoffs right now for them, but they're gonna try it as a starter. I get
Oh,
why because it was
yeah.
really good, right? And
And
the
they
command
also
isn't
wanted to
really set.
manage his workload a little
Yeah,
bit. He came off a TJ last year, made his return mid season or kind of like in the earlier part of the
yeah.
season, and then this was his first full year off of TJ. They very clearly tempered down his workload at the end of the year. So I think it definitely was a guy that could have helped him, but I think they're looking at the big picture and saying this is a guy that could be another like Dylan
Yeah.
Cease type
Yeah.
in our rotation where he might walk guys and it might be frustrating, but no one's going to make contact that frequently, so he can overcome that.
And let me ask you this before we finish up here. Is it a 70? Is it safely a 70 grade fastball?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's a
Yeah, I
70
think so
grade
too.
fastball.
That's what,
Yeah.
and then it's probably, I mean, the other two were probably 55s at least, right? That's what I would
Yeah, I
think
mean,
from looking at
if
his
you could
stuff.
execute that slider better, it'd be
Yeah.
a plus, and I think that changeup flashes plus as well. So I mean, you could have a 70 heater and two above average secondaries
Right.
with the potential for plus, and
It just
the
comes down to
only
command then.
variable is just
Yeah.
the command
Yep.
to get him to being a middle rotation type of arm.
Yeah, 100%, man. That was a fun list, and we're gonna get into some serious deep cuts next week. So for people that want to hear, the weeds of it, our Discord people, and hopefully some others that don't mind hearing it, we're gonna do some names that you may not have heard of
Yeah.
in the same kind of category next week, which will be
Yeah,
fun.
very much looking forward to that. And stay tuned. And of course, stay tuned for AFL coverage. I'll be putting out like AFL notes probably every day or two while I'm out there. So keep an eye out on justbaseball.com. And then I'll be kind of talking about some of those notes and takeaways on the show as well. But justbaseball.com's been churning out a lot of great stuff. Check out the site, a lot of good prospect content. And again, a reminder, would love to have you join our Discord. The link to join that's in the episode description. Best way to support us. And that's also where I'm going to be stuff that I'm not publishing or talking about just in real time while I'm at these games. I'll have my iPad and I'll be typing away in the Discord, letting people know some of the things that I'm seeing and sending some videos in out there too. So feel free to join there. We're also talking cards. We have a Bowman break also coming up in there as well, discounted for the Discord members. And speaking of discounts, 20% off if you text baseball to 29017. That helps us out big time too at Lids. As always, thank you for hanging out with us and listening, and look forward to talking prospects with you next week.